You'd think using fake money would require some level of cunning or sophistication. These people proved that assumption spectacularly wrong. From monopoly money at McDonald's to crayon-colored counterfeits, these financial geniuses redefined what it means to have 0 cents. 1. A man in Texas tried to buy a $2,000 laptop at Best Buy using a stack of monopoly money, arguing with the cashier for 20 minutes that money is money, and that the colorful bills should be accepted because they had numbers on them just like real currency. He became increasingly agitated when staff refused his payment, insisting that monopoly money was legal tender because it was manufactured by a legitimate American company and had official-looking designs with proper denominations clearly printed on each bill. Store security had to escort him out when he demanded to speak with the Federal Reserve about currency discrimination, claiming that Best Buy was violating his constitutional right to use alternative payment methods. He was arrested in the parking lot when he tried to pay for gas with monopoly money at the adjacent station, telling police that corporate America was conspiring against board game currency. 2. One woman attempted to deposit $50,000 in obviously fake bills at a bank, claiming she had inherited the money from her grandmother who collected rare currency that looked different from modern bills because they were from an earlier era of American printing. The fake bills were clearly printed on regular copy paper with a home printer, featuring blurry presidential portraits that looked like they had been photocopied from a children's textbook, and denominations that included a 45 bill and a 73 bill that don't exist in real currency. She insisted the bills were authentic vintage money and became hostile when tellers suggested the currency might not be legitimate, demanding to speak with the bank president about their discriminatory policies against historical currency collectors. Police were called when she refused to leave and threatened to report the bank to currency authentication authorities that don't exist, and she was arrested while still clutching her poorly counterfeited inheritance. 3. A teenager tried to buy marijuana from an undercover police officer using play money from a children's cash register toy, explaining that he thought drug dealers would accept any colorful paper bills because illegal stuff doesn't follow normal money rules anyway. The play money was obviously designed for children, featuring cartoon characters and bright colors with play money printed in large letters across each bill. But he argued that the transaction should be valid because the denominations were clearly marked, and the officer had agreed to sell drugs regardless of payment method. When the officer revealed his identity and arrested the teenager, the kid insisted he was being entrapped because the officer hadn't specified what type of currency was required for the drug purchase. He was charged with attempted drug purchase and possession of obviously fake currency, though charges were eventually dropped because prosecutors couldn't stop laughing long enough to present the case seriously. 4. One man painted regular notebook paper green and tried to use it as cash at a grocery store, claiming he had converted the paper into legal tender using a special government process he had learned about online from conspiracy theory websites. His homemade money featured hand-drawn presidential portraits that looked like elementary school art projects, with crayon-colored borders and denominations written in different handwriting styles, as if multiple children had collaborated on the counterfeiting project. He became angry when the cashier refused his payment, insisting that paper currency was just painted paper anyway, and that his version was more honest because he wasn't hiding the manufacturing process from consumers. Store management called police when he demanded they accept his hand-painted money and threatened to report them to the Treasury Department for discrimination against alternative currency production methods. 5. A woman tried to pay her $500 restaurant bill using Chinese hell money that she had purchased at a cultural gift shop, arguing that foreign currency should be accepted at American businesses because money is universal, and the bills had impressive designs that looked more sophisticated than American dollars. Hell money is specifically designed as ceremonial currency for burning at funerals and features obvious spiritual imagery, but she insisted it was legitimate Chinese legal tender that restaurants were obligated to accept under international commerce laws that don't exist. She called the police herself when the restaurant refused her payment, claiming she was being discriminated against for using international currency, but was arrested when officers recognized the ceremonial funeral money and charged her with attempting to use obviously fake currency. The restaurant manager kept one of the hell money bills as a conversation piece about the strangest payment attempt in the establishment's history. 6. One man tried to buy a car at a dealership using $15,000 in photocopied $20 bills, claiming he had backed up his money using office equipment in case the original bills were lost or stolen, and that copies should be legally equivalent to originals. The photocopied money was obviously fake, with black and white printing that made the bills look like homework assignments about currency. But he argued that photocopying was a legitimate preservation method, and that refusing copies was discrimination against people who used modern technology to protect their assets. Sales staff called police when he insisted on completing the car purchase with his copied money, and threatened to sue the dealership for rejecting his digitally preserved legal tender. He was arrested while arguing with officers that photocopying money was no different from banks using electronic transfers, and that his method was actually more secure because he had physical backup copies of his wealth. 7. A college student tried to pay tuition using $8,000 in movie prop money that he had purchased online, claiming that prop currency was legally equivalent to real money because it was used in Hollywood films and had been handled by famous actors who gave it authenticity value. The prop money was clearly marked as for motion picture use only, and featured obvious design flaws that made it unsuitable for actual transactions. But he argued that celebrity endorsement made the bills more valuable than regular currency, and that the university should be honored to accept payment that had been used in major motion pictures. University officials called police when he refused to leave the bursar's office and insisted that his prop money was superior to regular currency because it had entertainment industry provenance. He was arrested while explaining to officers that movie money was more trustworthy than government currency because Hollywood had better production values than the Federal Reserve. 8. One woman attempted to use $2,000 in chocolate coins wrapped in gold foil to pay for jewelry, arguing that gold-wrapped currency was more valuable than paper money and that the jewelry store should appreciate payment in precious metal-coated bills that matched their luxury merchandise. The chocolate coins were obviously candy with foil wrappers that said chocolate coins in multiple languages, but she insisted they were foreign currency with edible backing that made them more stable than paper-based monetary systems. Store employees called police when she became aggressive about their refusal to accept her chocolate payment and threatened to report them to precious metals trading authorities for discriminating against alternative currency formats. She was arrested while unwrapping chocolate coins to prove they contained real gold, revealing the candy underneath and explaining to officers that edible money was the future of economic security because it provided both monetary and nutritional value. 9. A man tried to pay his electric bill using $300 in Scrabble money from board games, claiming that word-based currency was more intellectually honest than traditional money because it represented actual educational value rather than arbitrary government promises about paper value. The Scrabble money featured point values instead of dollar amounts and had clear board game branding, but he argued that educational currency should be accepted by utility companies because it promoted literacy and intellectual development in ways that regular money couldn't achieve. Utility company staff called police when he refused to leave their office and insisted that his word game currency was superior to traditional payment methods because it combined financial transactions with vocabulary education. He was arrested while explaining to officers that Scrabble money was more valuable than regular currency because it helped people learn words while conducting business transactions. 10. One woman tried to buy groceries using $400 in clearly hand-drawn fake bills that featured crayon artwork of presidents and denominations that included a 33 bill and a 17 bill that looked like elementary school art projects about American currency. She claimed the bills were artisanal money, that she had crafted herself using traditional artistic techniques, and that handmade currency should be more valuable than mass-produced government bills because of the personal time and creativity invested in each piece. Store management called police when she insisted that her artistic currency was legal tender and threatened to contact art authentication experts about the store's discrimination against handcrafted monetary instruments. She was arrested while explaining to officers that her hand-drawn money was more trustworthy than printed currency because she could personally guarantee the authenticity of her own artistic work. 11. A teenager attempted to buy video games using $200 in Pokemon cards, arguing that collectible trading cards were a legitimate form of currency because they had fluctuating market values and were traded internationally by serious collectors who understood their investment potential. The Pokemon cards were obviously gaming accessories with cartoon characters and combat statistics, but he insisted that rare cards were more valuable than regular money, and that the game store should accept payment in premium collectibles that appreciated over time. Store employees called police when he refused to leave and threatened to report them to collectibles trading authorities for discriminating against alternative investment currencies. He was arrested while explaining to officers that Pokemon cards were superior to regular money because they provided entertainment value in addition to monetary worth and could be used for both transactions and gaming activities. 12. One man tried to pay restaurant bills using $500 in Confederate currency that he claimed was legal tender because the South never officially surrendered the right to print money, and that historical currency should be honored by businesses that respected American heritage and traditional values. The Confederate bills were obvious historical reproductions sold as novelty items, clearly marked as replicas, but he argued that Southern heritage currency was more authentic than modern federal money because it represented true American independence from government monetary control. Restaurant staff called police when he became hostile about their refusal to accept his Confederate payment and threatened to organize boycotts against businesses that discriminated against regional American currency traditions. He was arrested while lecturing officers about monetary sovereignty and states' rights, insisting that his historical currency was more patriotic than contemporary Federal Reserve notes. 13. A woman attempted to deposit $1,000 in obviously fake bills at a bank ATM, claiming the machine should accept any paper currency because computers can't tell the difference between real and fake money anyway, and that electronic banking systems were designed to process all bill-shaped objects regardless of authenticity. Her fake bills were clearly printed on regular printer paper with home computer equipment, featuring blurry images and incorrect fonts, but she argued that ATM technology was primitive and would automatically process any rectangular paper inserted into the deposit slot. Bank security called police when she became aggressive about the machine's rejection of her fake currency and started kicking the ATM while claiming it was malfunctioning and discriminating against alternative printing methods. She was arrested while explaining to officers that electronic banking should eliminate the need for currency authentication because computers don't have the same biases as human tellers. 14. One man tried to buy a motorcycle using $3,000 in Monopoly money mixed with real dollar bills, hoping the seller wouldn't notice the difference and that the legitimate currency would disguise the obvious board game money in the stack of mixed bills. He arranged the money so that real bills were on top and bottom of each stack, with Monopoly money hidden in the middle. But his disguise was immediately obvious because the board game currency was different sizes and colors than actual dollars. The motorcycle seller called police when he discovered the Monopoly money, and the buyer insisted that mixed currency was a legitimate payment method as long as some of the bills were authentic legal tender. He was arrested while arguing with officers that partial real money should count as full payment, and that Monopoly money was manufactured by a legitimate American company using official government licensing agreements. 15. A college student tried to pay dormitory fees using $1,500 in foreign currency that was obviously fake, featuring made-up countries and impossible denominations like 500 Atlantis dollars and 1,000 Elf Kingdom coins, with fantasy artwork that looked like video game currency or role-playing game money. She claimed the bills were from emerging nations that weren't widely recognized, but were developing legitimate monetary systems that would eventually be accepted internationally by progressive institutions. University staff called police when she insisted that her fantasy currency was real foreign money and threatened to contact international student advocacy groups about discrimination against students from non-recognized nations. She was arrested while explaining to officers that her fake foreign currency was more interesting than regular money and that colleges should encourage diversity by accepting payment from imaginary countries with creative monetary systems. 16. One woman attempted to use $800 in children's play money to pay for car repairs, arguing that automotive shops should accept educational currency because they provided valuable services that helped children learn about financial responsibility and transaction management through hands-on experience. The play money was obviously designed for children's games, featuring bright colors and cartoon characters with educational money printed prominently on each bill, but she insisted that learning-based currency was more socially responsible than regular money because it promoted childhood development while conducting business. The auto shop called police when she refused to provide real payment and threatened to report them to educational authorities for discrimination against learning-based monetary systems. She was arrested while lecturing officers about the importance of financial education and claiming that her play money was more valuable than regular currency because it taught children important life skills. 17. A man tried to pay his rent using $200 in paper bills that he had colored with markers to look like currency, featuring hand-drawn presidential portraits and denominations that he had made up, including 29 bills and 41 bills that don't exist in any monetary system. He claimed his artistic currency was legal tender because he had invested significant time and creativity in designing unique bills that were more beautiful than mass-produced government money. His landlord called police when he insisted that handmade money should be accepted as rent payment and threatened to contact tenant rights organizations about discrimination against artistic payment methods. He was arrested while explaining to officers that his marker-colored money was superior to printed currency because it was personally crafted and featured original artwork that made each bill a unique collectible item. 18. One teenager attempted to buy concert tickets using $150 in gift cards from various restaurants, claiming that gift cards were equivalent to cash because they had monetary value and could be used to purchase goods and services at legitimate businesses that accepted them as payment. The gift cards were obviously for specific restaurants and retail stores, not general currency, but he argued that all forms of stored monetary value should be interchangeable, and that the ticket office was discriminating against alternative payment methods. Box office staff called police when he became hostile about their refusal to accept his restaurant gift cards for concert tickets and threatened to report them to consumer protection agencies for limiting payment options. He was arrested while insisting to officers that gift cards were more secure than cash because they couldn't be stolen and used by criminals, and that businesses should accept any form of legitimate stored value. 19. A woman tried to pay her phone bill using $200 in casino chips from Las Vegas, arguing that gambling chips were legitimate currency because they were issued by regulated businesses and had specific monetary values that were guaranteed by gaming authorities and state licensing boards. The casino chips were obviously gaming tokens designed for use only at specific casinos, but she insisted that regulated gambling currency should be accepted everywhere because it was backed by legitimate businesses with more security than regular banks. Phone company staff called police when she refused to provide actual payment and threatened to contact gaming commissions about businesses that discriminated against casino-backed currency. She was arrested while explaining to officers that casino chips were more trustworthy than regular money because they were regulated by multiple government agencies and backed by profitable gaming enterprises. 20. One man attempted to use $600 in Chuck E. Cheese tokens to pay for groceries, claiming that arcade tokens were legitimate currency because they were purchased with real money and had specific values that could be exchanged for goods and services at authorized locations. The tokens were obviously designed for arcade games and featured cartoon characters with Chuck E. Cheese branding, but he argued that token-based currency was more fun than regular money, and that grocery stores should accept payment methods that encouraged family entertainment. Store management called police when he insisted that his arcade tokens were equivalent to cash and threatened to organize protests against businesses that discriminated against family-friendly payment systems. He was arrested while lecturing officers about the economic value of entertainment currency and claiming that arcade tokens were more honest than paper money because they were backed by actual games and prizes. 21. A college student tried to pay tuition using $5,000 in Halloween costume money that featured spooky designs with skeletons and ghosts, claiming it was seasonal currency that should be accepted during October as part of cultural diversity initiatives that celebrated different traditions and holidays. The costume money was obviously novelty items designed for Halloween decorations, featuring horror movie imagery and spooky money branding, but she argued that seasonal currency reflected cultural awareness and that universities should embrace diverse monetary traditions. University officials called police when she insisted that her Halloween money was legitimate seasonal tender and threatened to contact cultural diversity organizations about discrimination against holiday-themed payment methods. She was arrested while explaining to officers that seasonal money was more creative than regular currency and that educational institutions should support cultural expression through alternative monetary systems. 22. One woman attempted to pay her electric bill using $400 in Scooby-Doo-themed play money that featured cartoon characters and mystery-solving scenarios, arguing that educational entertainment currency should be accepted because it promoted childhood learning and positive values through beloved characters. The play money was obviously children's toy currency, with Cartoon Network branding and mystery money printed on each bill. But she insisted that character-based currency was more trustworthy than government money because it was associated with family-friendly entertainment that taught important life lessons. Utility company staff called police when she refused to provide real payment and threatened to contact children's advocacy groups about discrimination against educational entertainment currency. She was arrested while lecturing officers about the positive social value of cartoon-based monetary systems and claiming that Scooby-Doo money was more reliable than federal currency because it was backed by decades of successful entertainment. 23. A man tried to buy a laptop using $800 in foreign currency that was obviously fake, featuring made-up European countries and impossible denominations like 500 Fredonia euros and 1,000 Ruritania pounds, with geographic references that didn't correspond to any real nations or monetary systems. He claimed the bills were from micronations that weren't widely recognized, but were developing legitimate economies that would eventually be accepted by international businesses and progressive retailers. Electronic store staff called police when he insisted that his fictional foreign currency was real international money and threatened to contact embassy officials from countries that didn't exist. He was arrested while explaining to officers that his fake foreign money was more internationally minded than American currency and that global businesses should accept payment from emerging nations, regardless of current diplomatic recognition. 24. One teenager attempted to pay for fast food using $50 in board game money from various strategy games, claiming that gaming currency was legitimate tender because it was used in competitive tournaments with official rules and prize money that validated its economic value. The board game money featured fantasy themes and gaming company logos with game money clearly printed on each piece. But he argued that competitive gaming currency should be accepted because it was backed by organized leagues and tournament systems. Restaurant staff called police when he insisted that his gaming money was equivalent to cash and threatened to contact board game manufacturers about businesses that discriminated against tournament-validated currency. He was arrested while lecturing officers about the economic ecosystem of competitive gaming and claiming that board game money was more skillfully earned than regular currency because it required strategic thinking and competitive success. 25. A woman tried to pay her car insurance using $300 in Disney dollars that had been discontinued years earlier, claiming that theme park currency was legitimate money because it was issued by a major corporation and had been accepted at Disney properties for decades before being discontinued. The Disney dollars were obviously theme park souvenirs with cartoon characters and Disney money branding, but she argued that corporate currency should be accepted everywhere because it was backed by one of America's most successful entertainment companies. Insurance company staff called police when she refused to provide real payment and threatened to contact Disney corporate headquarters about businesses that discriminated against theme park currency. She was arrested while explaining to officers that Disney money was more magical than regular currency and that businesses should accept payment from successful entertainment corporations regardless of current corporate policies. 26. One man attempted to use $1,000 in play money from a board game cafe to pay for car repairs, claiming that gaming establishment currency was legitimate tender because it was regulated by business licensing authorities and used in commercial entertainment facilities that operated as legitimate businesses. The play money was obviously cafe gaming tokens with board game cafe branding and cartoon designs, but he argued that business-issued currency should be accepted everywhere because it was backed by legitimate commercial enterprises with proper business licenses. Auto shop staff called police when he insisted that his cafe gaming money was equivalent to cash and threatened to contact business licensing authorities about discrimination against commercially issued entertainment currency. He was arrested while lecturing officers about the economic validity of business-issued alternative currencies and claiming that gaming cafe money was more community-oriented than federal currency. 27. A college student tried to pay dormitory fees using $2,000 in foreign currency that was clearly printed on a home computer, featuring obvious spelling errors and impossible country names like the Untied States of America and Republic of California, with geographic inconsistencies that revealed the amateur counterfeiting attempt. She claimed the bills were from alternative timeline countries that existed in parallel dimensions, and that progressive universities should accept interdimensional currency as part of diversity and inclusion initiatives. University staff called police when she insisted that her obviously fake foreign money was legitimate alternative reality currency, and threatened to contact science fiction advocacy groups about discrimination against multiverse monetary systems. She was arrested while explaining to officers that interdimensional currency was more scientifically advanced than regular money, and that academic institutions should embrace theoretical physics by accepting payment from parallel universe economies. 28. One woman attempted to pay for groceries using $500 in religious-themed play money that featured biblical characters and scripture verses, claiming that faith-based currency should be accepted because it was backed by spiritual values and religious institutions that were more trustworthy than government monetary systems. The religious money was obviously Sunday school educational materials with Bible money branding and cartoon apostles, but she argued that spiritually backed currency was more morally sound than secular government money. Store management called police when she insisted that her religious currency was legitimate tender, and threatened to contact religious freedom organizations about discrimination against faith-based payment methods. She was arrested while lecturing officers about the spiritual superiority of biblical currency and claiming that religious money was more ethically sound than Federal Reserve notes because it was backed by eternal values rather than temporary political systems. 29. A man tried to buy a television using $100 or $200 in currency that he had drawn himself using crayons and construction paper, featuring original presidential portraits that looked like kindergarten art projects, and denominations that he had invented, including 37 bills and 52 bills, that reflected his personal aesthetic preferences. He claimed his artistic currency was legitimate money because he had invested significant creative effort in designing unique bills that were more personalized than mass-produced government currency. Electronics store staff called police when he insisted that his crayon money should be accepted as payment, and threatened to contact art advocacy groups about discrimination against handcrafted monetary expression. He was arrested while explaining to officers that his hand-drawn money was more authentic than printed currency because it represented personal artistic investment and creative expression that made each bill a unique work of art. 30. One teenager attempted to pay school lunch fees using $100 in Pokemon trading card game energy cards, claiming that gaming currency was legitimate tender because it was used in organized competitive play with official tournaments and prize support that validated its economic ecosystem. The Pokemon cards were obviously gaming accessories with cartoon characters and game mechanics printed on them, but he argued that competitive gaming currency should be accepted because it was regulated by official tournament rules and had fluctuating market values. School staff called police when he insisted that his gaming cards were equivalent to cash and threatened to contact gaming advocacy organizations about discrimination against competitive hobby currencies. He was arrested while lecturing officers about the economic complexity of trading card games and claiming that Pokemon energy was more strategically valuable than regular money because it required skill and knowledge to use effectively. 31. A woman tried to pay her phone bill using $250 in currency from the board game Life that featured cartoon families and life event scenarios, claiming that life simulation currency was legitimate money because it was designed to teach important financial lessons and represented real economic principles through educational gameplay. The Life money was obviously board game components with Life game money branding and cartoon graphics. But she argued that educational currency should be accepted because it was backed by important life skills training and financial literacy education. Phone company staff called police when she refused to provide real payment and threatened to contact educational advocacy groups about discrimination against learning-based monetary systems. She was arrested while explaining to officers that life game money was more educationally valuable than regular currency because it taught important lessons about financial planning and life decision-making through interactive gameplay. 32. One man attempted to use $800 in currency from various video games that he had printed from online sources, claiming that digital game currency was legitimate money because it was backed by major software companies and used in virtual economies with real-world trading markets. The video game money featured fantasy artwork and gaming company logos with clear indications that it was designed for entertainment purposes. But he argued that digital currency should be accepted everywhere because it represented the future of monetary systems. Electronics store staff called police when he insisted that his printed game currency was equivalent to cash and threatened to contact gaming industry organizations about discrimination against digital monetary innovations. He was arrested while lecturing officers about the economic evolution of virtual currencies and claiming that video game money was more technologically advanced than physical currency because it represented the digital future of economic transactions. 33. A college student tried to pay tuition using $3,000 in foreign currency that was obviously counterfeit, featuring impossible combinations of different countries' design elements and denominations that didn't exist in any real monetary system like British yen and Canadian pesos with geographic impossibilities. She claimed the bills were from currency exchange experiments conducted by international banking authorities to test new global monetary systems that would eventually replace traditional national currencies. University staff called police when she insisted that her experimental international currency was legitimate tender and threatened to contact global banking organizations about discrimination against innovative monetary research. She was arrested while explaining to officers that her fake international money represented the future of global economics, and that educational institutions should embrace experimental currencies as part of international business education. 34. One woman attempted to pay for car repairs using $600 in pirate-themed play money that featured skull and crossbones designs with treasure map backgrounds, claiming that historical adventure currency should be accepted because it represented important maritime heritage and cultural traditions that deserved recognition and respect. The pirate money was obviously novelty items with pirate treasure branding and cartoon buccaneers, but she argued that nautical heritage currency was more authentic than modern money because it was connected to America's maritime history and adventure traditions. Auto shop staff called police when she insisted that her pirate currency was legitimate historical tender and threatened to contact maritime heritage organizations about discrimination against nautical cultural expression. She was arrested while lecturing officers about the historical importance of pirate economics and claiming that treasure-based currency was more adventurous than Federal Reserve notes. 35. A man tried to buy groceries using $400 in chocolate coins that he had removed from their foil wrappers and tried to pass off as foreign currency, claiming that edible money was the future of economic systems because it combined monetary value with nutritional benefits that made transactions more practical. The chocolate coins were obviously candy with bite marks and melting spots, but he argued that edible currency was more innovative than paper money because it provided both economic and caloric value while preventing hoarding and encouraging circulation through consumption. Store management called police when he insisted that his chocolate currency should be accepted as payment and threatened to contact nutritional advocacy groups about discrimination against edible monetary innovations. He was arrested while explaining to officers that chocolate money was more logical than paper currency because it couldn't be counterfeited by people without access to chocolate manufacturing equipment. 36. One teenager attempted to pay for concert tickets using $200 in foreign currency that he had created by gluing glitter and stickers onto regular paper, claiming that decorative international money was legitimate tender because it was more beautiful than American currency and represented artistic appreciation for global monetary design. His glitter money featured obvious craft supplies and sparkle dollars written in marker, but he argued that artistic currency should be accepted because it represented creative expression and international aesthetic appreciation. Box office staff called police when he insisted that his craft project currency was real foreign money and threatened to contact arts advocacy organizations about discrimination against creative monetary expression. He was arrested while explaining to officers that his sparkly money was more beautiful than regular currency and that businesses should appreciate artistic effort in payment methods. 37. A woman tried to pay her electric bill using $350 in currency from the board game Payday that featured cartoon workers and paycheck scenarios, claiming that employment simulation currency was legitimate money because it was designed to teach important lessons about work and financial responsibility through realistic economic gameplay. The payday money was obviously board game components with employment-themed artwork and payday game money branding, but she argued that work-based educational currency should be accepted because it represented important employment principles and financial literacy training. Utility company staff called police when she refused to provide real payment and threatened to contact employment advocacy groups about discrimination against work education monetary systems. She was arrested while lecturing officers about the educational value of employment simulation currency and claiming that payday money was more work-oriented than regular currency because it taught important lessons about earning and managing money through employment. 38. One man attempted to use $700 in foreign currency that featured obvious cartoon characters from American animated shows, claiming that international entertainment currency was legitimate money because it was backed by global media companies and represented the future of internationally recognized entertainment-based monetary systems. The cartoon money featured Disney and Warner Brothers characters with impossible country names like Toonland and Cartoon Republic. But he argued that entertainment currency should be accepted because it was backed by successful multinational corporations. Electronic store staff called police when he insisted that his cartoon foreign money was legitimate international currency and threatened to contact entertainment industry organizations about discrimination against media-based monetary innovations. He was arrested while explaining to officers that cartoon currency was more globally recognized than American money because animated characters were understood worldwide regardless of language barriers. 39. A college student tried to pay dormitory fees using $1,800 in currency that she had created by laminating construction paper and drawing her own presidential portraits using colored pencils, claiming that artistic constitutional currency was legitimate money because it represented creative interpretation of American monetary traditions. Her laminated money featured obvious art supply materials and hand-drawn portraits that looked like elementary school projects. But she argued that artistic currency should be accepted because it represented personal creative expression and constitutional appreciation. University staff called police when she insisted that her art project money was legitimate tender and threatened to contact constitutional advocacy groups about discrimination against artistic monetary interpretation. She was arrested while explaining to officers that her hand-drawn currency was more patriotic than printed money because it represented personal investment in American constitutional traditions through artistic expression. 40. One woman attempted to pay for groceries using $450 in casino play money that she had purchased online, claiming that gaming currency was legitimate tender because it was designed to look like real money and was used in gambling establishments that were regulated by government gaming authorities. The casino play money was obviously marked as for gaming use only and featured casino branding, but she argued that regulated gaming currency should be accepted everywhere because it was backed by legitimate businesses with government licenses. Store management called police when she insisted that her casino play money was equivalent to cash and threatened to contact gaming regulatory authorities about businesses that discriminated against casino-issued currency. She was arrested while lecturing officers about the regulatory backing of casino currency and claiming that gaming money was more secure than regular currency because it was designed to prevent counterfeiting in professional gambling environments. 41. A man tried to buy a motorcycle using $2,500 in foreign currency that he had obviously created using a color printer and clip art, featuring impossible combinations of different countries' flags and leaders with geographic impossibilities like Australian rubles and Mexican euros that revealed his complete ignorance of international monetary systems. He claimed the bills were from emerging economic partnerships between countries that were developing new international currencies to replace traditional national monetary systems. Motorcycle dealership staff called police when he insisted that his obviously fake international currency was legitimate tender and threatened to contact international trade organizations about discrimination against experimental global monetary cooperation. He was arrested while explaining to officers that his fake foreign money represented the future of international economics, and that progressive businesses should accept experimental currencies as part of global trade evolution. 42. One teenager attempted to pay school lunch fees using $75 in currency from various mobile games that she had printed from screenshots, claiming that digital gaming currency was legitimate money because it was purchased with real money and had actual economic value in virtual marketplace systems. The mobile game currency featured fantasy artwork and game company logos with clear indications that it was designed for entertainment purchases. But she argued that digital currency should be accepted everywhere because it represented the evolution of monetary systems toward electronic transactions. School staff called police when she insisted that her printed game currency was equivalent to cash and threatened to contact digital rights organizations about discrimination against virtual monetary innovations. She was arrested while lecturing officers about the economic validity of in-game purchases and claiming that mobile game currency was more technologically advanced than physical money because it existed in digital ecosystems. 43. A woman tried to pay her car insurance using $320 in currency that she had created by photocopying real bills and coloring them with different colored markers to improve the designs, claiming that enhanced artistic currency was legitimate money because it represented creative improvement on existing government monetary designs. Her marker-colored photocopies were obviously fake with crayon artwork added to copied bill designs. But she argued that artistic enhancement made currency more valuable and that businesses should appreciate creative improvements to standard monetary designs. Insurance company staff called police when she insisted that her enhanced currency should be accepted as payment and threatened to contact artistic advocacy groups about discrimination against creative monetary improvement. She was arrested while explaining to officers that her marker-enhanced money was more beautiful than regular currency and that artistic improvement made her bills more valuable than standard government designs. 44. One man attempted to use $900 in currency from board games that he had collected from thrift stores, claiming that vintage gaming currency was legitimate money because it was manufactured by established companies and had historical value that made it more collectible than contemporary government currency. The board game money featured various game themes and company logos from different decades, but he argued that collectible gaming currency should be accepted because it was backed by the historical success of American game manufacturers. Auto repair shop staff called police when he insisted that his collection of game money was equivalent to cash and threatened to contact collectibles organizations about discrimination against vintage gaming currency. He was arrested while lecturing officers about the historical value of board game money and claiming that vintage gaming currency was more culturally significant than modern Federal Reserve notes because it represented important American entertainment heritage. 45. And finally, one college student tried to pay her entire semester tuition using $12,000 in obviously handmade currency that she had created as an art project, featuring her own self-portraits as the president on each bill and denominations based on her personal preferences like 23 bills, because that was her favorite number. She claimed her artistic currency was legitimate money because it represented the ultimate expression of personal monetary freedom, and that educational institutions should embrace student creativity by accepting personally designed payment methods. Her handmade money featured construction paper, glue sticks, and crayon artwork that looked like elementary school currency projects, but she argued that artistic self-expression made her bills more valuable than mass-produced government currency. University officials called police when she insisted that her art project money should be accepted as tuition payment and threatened to organize student protests about discrimination against creative monetary expression. She was arrested while explaining to officers that her self-portrait currency was more democratic than government money because it represented personal monetary sovereignty and artistic freedom from federal banking control systems. The beautiful irony of fake money schemes is that they require real stupidity to attempt. These financial geniuses proved that some people can't even commit crimes correctly, turning counterfeiting into an art form of incompetence. Remember, if your money features cartoon characters or smells like chocolate, it's probably not legal tender. Subscribe if you want more proof that common sense isn't that common, especially when money is involved.